Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting journey into the living world of biology. Have you ever looked at a mango tree in full bloom and wondered, how do these flowers transform into juicy fruits without ever moving from their place? The answer lies in a beautiful process called pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther, which is the male part of a flower, to the stigma, which is the female part. This simple movement of tiny pollen grains sets the stage for the miracle of fertilization and, ultimately, fruit and seed formation. The male reproductive part, the stamen, produces pollen grains filled with male gametes, while the female reproductive part, the carpel, waits with its receptive stigma. When pollen successfully lands on it, the magic of life continues. This process is essential for genetic continuity, ensuring that plants do not vanish after one generation but continue to reproduce and thrive. Now, pollination can happen in two main ways. First, self-pollination. This occurs when pollen is transferred within the same flower or between two flowers on the same plant. It's like the flower saying, "I'll take care of myself." Plants like peas and rice often rely on this method. Second, cross-pollination. Here, pollen travels between flowers of different plants of the same species. Imagine a bee flying from one hibiscus flower to another. It unknowingly becomes a carrier of life. Mustard and hibiscus are common examples. Why does cross-pollination matter? Because it introduces genetic variation. Just as humans inherit different traits from their parents, plants too gain stronger, more adaptable characteristics when cross-pollinated. Next time you see a butterfly hopping between blossoms, remember, it's also promoting cross-pollination and therefore biodiversity. Now let's meet the unsung, non-living helpers, wind and water. In wind pollination, or anemophily, light and dry pollen grains are whisked away by air currents. Think about madge or grass fields swaying in the breeze. Millions of pollen grains travel invisibly through the air, hoping to land on a stigma. In water pollination, or hydrophily, pollen grains float or drift with water currents until they meet the female part. A classic example is Vallisneria, where thread-like pollen glides across the water surface. To suit these methods, flowers adapt. Vine-pollinated flowers are small, dull-colored, and produce pollen in large quantities since much of it is wasted. Aquatic plants develop pollen that can survive water exposure. Isn't it fascinating how plants quietly adapt their designs to make sure pollination succeeds? Now let's turn to the busiest workers in the plant kingdom, insects. Insect pollination, or entomophily, depends on bright, fragrant flowers with nectar rewards. Bees, butterflies, and beetles are attracted, and as they sip nectar, pollen sticks to their bodies. The next flower they visit receives that pollen. Take the sunflower, for example. A honeybee buzzing around is not only collecting nectar for honey, but also carrying grains of life from one flower head to another. Flowers have clever adaptations, sticky pollen, sweet scents, and feathery stigmas to maximize success. This is a perfect mutualistic relationship. Insects get food, while plants get reproduction. A win-win situation crafted by evolution. But insects aren't the only helpers. Birds, bats, and even some unusual animals join this mission. Bird pollination, or ornithophily, is common in flowers that are brightly colored, often red or yellow, and produce abundant nectar. Think of hummingbirds sipping from tubular flowers. Then there's bat pollination, or chiropterophily. Large, pale-colored flowers with a strong night fragrance, like those of Bauhinia, attract bats who carry pollen while feeding at night. Even snails and rodents occasionally step in as accidental pollinators. Notice how each pollinator is attracted to special flower features, color, shape, or scent. Nature designs flowers like advertisements to match their pollinators. Let's weigh the pros and cons of self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination ensures success even when pollinators are absent. For example, wheat plants can fertilize themselves in isolated conditions. However, the drawback is limited genetic diversity, making offspring less adaptable. On the other hand, cross-pollination creates variety and vigor. Offspring often show hybrid vigor, better growth, resistance, and adaptability. But it does come with a cost. It depends on agents and requires higher energy investment from the plant. In short, self-pollination guarantees survival, while cross-pollination ensures strength and diversity. Now here comes the fascinating part: special tricks that plants use to avoid self-pollination and promote cross-pollination. One is dichogamy, where the anther and stigma mature at different times. In sunflowers, sometimes the anther releases pollen earlier or later than when the stigma is receptive. Second is hercogamy, physical separation of the stigma and anther by barriers, so pollen cannot easily land on its own stigma. Petunia shows this adaptation. Third, self-incompatibility, a genetic mechanism where even if pollen lands on its own stigma, it fails to germinate. Charles Darwin studied orchids extensively, uncovering fascinating floral adaptations designed to ensure cross-pollination. Imagine flowers evolving in partnership with insects over millions of years. So, let's bring everything together. Pollination is one of nature's most vital processes. It ensures the continuation of plant species and the production of fruits and seeds. We explored the difference between self and cross-pollination, met abiotic agents like wind and water, and biotic agents like insects, birds, and bats. We admired the clever adaptations flowers use, from sticky pollen to bright petals, and we learned about advanced mechanisms that promote genetic diversity. Next time you watch a bee buzzing, a butterfly hovering, or even the wind shaking a cornfield, remember, you are witnessing pollination in action, one of nature's most elegant reproductive strategies. Biology truly is the science of life, showing us how even the smallest grains of pollen carry the future of an entire species. I hope this session has opened your eyes to the marvels of pollination. See you in our next class, where we will continue to explore more secrets of the living world. Until then, stay curious, stay observant, and keep marveling at the wonders of life around you.